Tea break tips.
Okay, so in this video we're going to be looking at understanding border radius with help from our good friend Bagpuss. If you're not familiar with Bagpuss, here's the start of the 1974 British kids TV show of the same name. There were only ever 13 episodes made, but it remains iconic to this day, so who better to help us understand border radius? So here we've got an image with a border radius set at 50%. If I was to remove that, you can see this is going to revert back to being a square image, but if we set it to 50%, it sort of rounds the corners and gives us a circle. It's not a perfect circle because it's not a perfectly square image, so this isn't doing any cropping of the height and width, it's just cropping of the corners with the border radius. If we were to set that value to higher, 100%, then that's not going to make any difference because it's the same on all sides. So this is 50% is 50% of the width and 50% of the height. So this is filling the space 50% plus 50%, 100%. So that does border radius all the way around. If we were to go lower, let's do it 40%, you can see that slightly squares off the corners there. Also, you can do 40 pixels as well if we wanted something like that, or we could do something like 4M. So there's lots of different values we can use here. Let's reset it to 50%. So I do see a few people using this in email, and I think I'd like to see it more. It's a very small bit of code, very simple. Where it doesn't work, it just gives you a square image. If we look at Can I Email for support, it's 87.8%. Doesn't work in Windows, Outlook. There's also a few like Orange, GMX, WebDE where it doesn't work. And Yahoo and AOL have got partial support, but we do have a workaround for this partial support, so we'll talk about that in a moment. So that's setting a border radius, but did you know you can set 4 values on a border radius? So here we're setting it to 50%, 50%, 20%, 100%. So if I just focus in on this code here, you can see this starts from the top left and goes around clockwise. So top left is 50%, top right is 50%, bottom right is 20%, bottom left is 100%. So if I was to change this top left to be 20%, you can see this upper corner change up here, like so. Let's just reset that back. So this will work in all the same places that the border radius works. Doesn't need to be all the same unit as well, so we can change this to 1M rather than 20 pixels, and that'll work. So let's undo that. Not only can it take 4 values, it can actually take 8 values. So if we look at this here, we've got four values and then a slash and then another 4 values. So again, this is top left going around clockwise, but this is the top left first value and the top left second value. So top left corner here is 50%, and after the slash it's also 50%. So the left side of the top left corner is set first, here 50%, and then the top side of the top left corner is set here at 50%. Then the top right corner, the top side of the top right corner is set to 50%. The right side of it is set to 92% coming down here. So it can be quite tricky to get your head around these values. So there's a number of tools around. So this is like this fancy border radius generator. You can just drag this around and it will give you the code to copy and paste. So we can just copy this code here, go back to Parcel and paste it in. And that'll give us that shape instead, which is kind of weird. I preferred the one we had before. Let's stick with that. So this is where we have the partial support. Yahoo and AOL, they don't support if you include the little slash in the border radius value. However, if you use the longhand values, then it is supported. So a quick way of dealing with this, if we just go into our DevTools, inspect, we can see our border radius here. There's a little arrow. If we click on that here, then it expands it out, and we can just copy these expanded values, close this down, and we can just paste it in here. And now it doesn't change the look of it, but this now does work in Yahoo and AOL. So it's just a little shortcut there. All the dev tools, I'm using Firefox here, but whatever browser you're looking at, you can pull that out there, which is a nice way of doing it. So next up, when you're adding this, you can add a border. This is a border radius, so adding a border is good. So I've added a pink border around here. But what I think a lot of people don't do is experiment with the border style. So here I've set a border 15 pixels as the width, the style is solid, and the color is FAB. So if I was to put a double border in there, then actually it gives something a bit more interesting, something a bit different. It makes it stand out. This works everywhere. The only caveat with this is Windows Outlook has a maximum of 8 pixels. So in Windows Outlook, that will look like this, if I just drop that down to 8 pixels. So it's not as good. I quite like the 15, but it still works. And another thing we can do here, this one's a dashed border, but as well as adding the dashed border, I'm adding a background in, and this background fills the space. So without the background, it'll be like we had with the double border, it just shows the background behind that. But if I add a background to the image as well, then that fills in those gaps with a dashed border. So I hope that's interesting, and play around with it. I'd like to start seeing these sort of things happening a lot more in emails because I think it looks great. Thanks a lot.